Hi everybody, Pastor Tim here at Calvary Church in Pueblo, and this is the message recap, rewind, and bonus features for the message we had Sunday, which was August 15th. We were finishing up, and did finish up, the book of Judges, and we spent several months in the book of Judges, and we ended in chapter 21. And in chapter 21, it sort of was the ending of that section of chapters 19, 20, and 21. All were one kind of story. And we saw at the very end of the book a tragic, absolutely tragic event that occurred in the life of Israel when there was no king and everyone was doing what was right in their own eyes. Even the solutions that Israel came to, all those solutions, after a time of worship before God, pouring their hearts out and weeping and sacrificing before God, even the decisions they made in the midst of that worship were sinful because they had no grounding and foundation through leadership and guidance. They were winging it totally on their own. And any time a culture, a society, or a person wings it on their own or feels as if, you know what, I can go through the motions of religious exercise, but in the end, I determine how I live. I'm the one who determines how I act. I'm the one who determines whether or not my feelings are right or wrong. When a person gets to that point, they will end up leading a life of chaos. Maybe not from the outside. I'm not talking about they're going to end up being a murderer and thrown in prison, but they're going to end up on their own. And when you are on your own, or a family, a city, a country, a culture is left on their own, they are doomed to repeat the sins of the book of Judges. They will end up compromising their faith. They will end up making decisions that are on the surface pragmatic. You know, they might get the job done, like Israel did in Judges chapter 21, but in the end, they will lead themselves into more and more discomfort and judgment from God until they repent. We ended, more of a kind of a bonus features, in Hebrews chapter 12. Hebrews 11 talks about all the great heroes of the faith in the book of Judges, as well as the Old Testament. So there are some heroes of the faith in the book of Judges, even though they still had sinful expressions of idolatry and compromise in their lives. God looks at that and still says, even in that compromised, sinful position, they have benefit to us. We not just learn from their examples of goodness, but we learn from their examples of sinfulness, what to do and what not to do. And ultimately, it culminates in the life of Christ. And we looked at these verses, but I want to hone in on these. Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 through 3. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, all those people and examples we've had in the past, there's purpose in that. There's action when we think about all those judges that we looked at and all the actions of Israel. Let us also lay aside every weight and sin that clings so closely to us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. So the first thing we see is we need to rid ourselves of being connected to sin, rid ourselves of self-dependence, rid ourselves of making judgment calls without seeking God first. There's no solutions that we're going to come up with that are better than God's solutions for all of life. Why don't we start and focus on His solutions for our lives? And so the author of Hebrews says, hey, let us lay aside everything that stops us from that focus. Anything that stops us from living greatly before God as our object of pure affection, pure devotion, pure reverence, anything that gets in the way of that, put it away. It is going to hinder you in the end. You may think it's innocent. You may think that it's just a fleeting fancy in your life, and you can get rid of it at any moment. Then get rid of it now. Any sin, attitude, or assumption, or thought that keeps you from focusing solely on Christ, get rid of. Because he continues and says in verse 2, look to Jesus, lock on to him, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God. It doesn't matter how closely you are connected and want to cling to that sin or self-importance or self-decision, self-rule. It doesn't matter how closely you want to cling to it or how hard it is to get away. Think of how Christ endured the cross. That was hard. It's not hard to give away lustful thinking when you consider it in light of the cross that Jesus had to bear and died upon. Everything that hinders us and weighs us down is nothing compared to what Jesus went through on your behalf to make you whole with God, to make you unbroken before him. What a beautiful lesson that Judges gives us. What a beautiful encouragement at the end it gives us, because we have a King, Jesus, that sets it right for our own hearts. Let's strive towards that. Let us pursue that. Now, the message that we're going to have Sunday, this coming Sunday, is going to really focus on that message of Christ is King and show us the difference between the life that Israel led for hundreds of years in the book of Judges and the life that we can lead. I want you to join us for that message, whether it's online at 10:30 on our website or it is in person. You are invited to come and hear the great news and story, how Jesus is our King, how he crushes our enemies, how he gives us protection, how he provides for us, and how he leads us into daily victory over those things that weigh us down. So if you feel weighed down by whatever it might be, then Sunday's message is going to be incredibly liberating. So come join us. And so until then, have a great week. God bless. Keep your eyes locked on Christ.